name is Lisa. My husband, John, and I have been married for 25 years. We are an ordinary American family from the suburbs. A house, 2 cars, a job, friends. Our marriage has been through a lot over the years. Ups, downs. But we have always been together. I got used to our relaxed pace of life. We've become a part of each other, like old, comfortable shoes. Maybe not very colorful, but time-tested. Recently, our nephew, Michael, moved in with us for a while. He is the son of John's sister and is in college. Michael is 22 and now finishing his senior year, but due to his parents' financial problems, he had to move in with us. John happily agreed to help his nephew, and I, of course, supported that decision. I've always felt that we should support the family, especially when it comes to a child who is not yet on their feet. Michael was a quiet, somewhat withdrawn guy, but seemingly decent. He spent most of his time sitting in his room studying or playing video games. Occasionally, I'd notice him going off to meet friends or working a part-time job somewhere. But overall, he was inconspicuous. John and I hardly noticed his presence, as my husband and I had our own routine to attend to. But in spite of this peaceful atmosphere, I began to notice something strange. It started with little things. Michael began to lock himself in his room more often. Of course, that's not unusual for a guy his age. They all like their privacy. But that's not what confused me. He was always nervous when someone accidentally walked in on him. Even John once said that his nephew started acting strange. To be honest, I didn't pay much attention to it. Maybe it was a personal problem or something with his studies. John and I tried not to get involved, but I was concerned about how things had changed with my husband. Over the last few months, he and I had become less and less intimate. He was preoccupied with work, and in the evenings he often went out with friends or stayed late for business meetings. I didn't make a drama out of it, because 25 years of marriage is not about constant romance. But the feeling that something was wrong started to weigh on me. I even discussed it with a friend. She said it was a normal stage for long marriages, but I still couldn't shake off the anxious thoughts. One evening, I came home a little earlier than usual. John had said he'd be late for work, so I didn't expect to see him. The house was quiet, and I automatically headed toward Michael's room. The door was ajar, and a dim light was pouring in. At first, I didn't think anything suspicious. Just decided to go in and ask him how he was. But when I looked inside, I saw something that made my heart sink. John was there, with Michael, and they were too close. Too intimate. Michael was sitting on the bed, his chest bare. John was leaning over him, their faces very close together. I saw John gently touch his lips. It was a kiss, soft, barely noticeable, but a kiss. Then their bodies began to move closer together, and John's hand slowly slid down Michael's back, wrapping his arms around him, pulling him to him. I froze in the doorway, unable to move. My throat was dry and my head was buzzing. I couldn't believe what I saw in front of me. My husband, the man I'd spent 25 years with, was cradling our nephew, his fingers sliding down Michael's body and their lips touching again. There was a tension in the air that was impossible to ignore. I felt the blood rush to my face and my heart pounding frantically. Shock, pain, betrayal, all mixed up inside me. I had images of our marriage in front of my eyes, the wedding, the years of living together, our home. And now it was all crumbling before my eyes. My mind wanted to scream, but it was like I was paralyzed. What does this mean? How could this happen? Why John? Why them? I quietly shut the door, unable to look at it any longer. Emptiness rang in my head. This was the point of no return. Everything I knew about my life and family now seemed like an illusion. After what I saw, everything in me turned over. I went back to the bedroom and just collapsed on the bed, staring at the ceiling. There were 1,000 questions swirling around in my head. How long ago had this started? Why hadn't I noticed anything? What was I supposed to do now? My life was suddenly completely foreign. Had all 25 years of our marriage been a lie? Or did it start recently? I couldn't sleep. Images of what I saw haunted me. The kisses, their closeness. It was too much. I was filled with anger, but most of all, pain. This betrayal I couldn't bear. John, my husband, with whom we'd been through so much. How could he do this? The next morning, I felt terrible. I couldn't look John in the eye. He was as if nothing had happened, drinking coffee in the kitchen, getting ready for work. I stood across from him and thought about how to tell him what I knew. But the words stuck in my throat. I couldn't speak. It was several days before I pulled myself together. That night, John came home later than usual. I sat in the living room, determined that today was the day I would lay it all out. We can't live like this anymore. I can't. He noticed that something was wrong, but he didn't say anything at first. When we were alone, I finally summoned up the courage to speak. My voice shook, but I spoke up. I know. I saw you and Michael. John froze. He turned pale for a moment, but then he pulled himself together. His face didn't show much emotion, but I could see that he understood what I was saying. Lisa, he began, but I interrupted him. How long has this been going on? Do you even realize what you've done? I lived with you for 25 years, and now this? My words sounded sharp and hoarse, as if I was choking on pain. He lowered his eyes and was silent for a long time. I waited. I waited for an explanation, for a confession, anything that might help me understand why this had happened. It was a while ago, he finally said. I don't know how it happened. I don't understand it myself. His words sounded pathetic, like excuses I couldn't even process. I felt a wall growing between us, cold and insurmountable. We were on opposite sides of that wall, and neither I nor he could break it down. You destroyed everything, John. Everything we had. I couldn't hold back the tears. It wasn't anger. It was emptiness, a sense of loss. I was devastated that the man I'd trusted my whole life had so easily blown it all away. Lisa, I'm sorry. It's a mistake. His voice was shaking, but I couldn't hear it anymore. A mistake? It's not a mistake, John. You knew what you were doing. You made a choice. We didn't speak again that night. He went to sleep in the other room, and I was alone with my thoughts. It seemed our life, our marriage, everything between us was in jeopardy. For days after our conversation with John, I felt like I was in a fog. I couldn't concentrate on anything: work, home, even simple everyday tasks no longer made sense to me. But worst of all, Michael was still in our house, He was living as if nothing had happened. As if nothing had happened. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. I knew that sooner or later I would have to talk to him directly. One evening, when John wasn't home, I summoned all my strength and decided I couldn't put it off any longer. The knock on the door of Michael's room was almost mechanical. I didn't know what I would say when he opened it, but I knew that this conversation was inevitable. Michael opened the door, looking at me with surprise, as if he hadn't expected my visit. His face was calm, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Maybe it was anxiety. Maybe it was shame. I gestured to him that I wanted to talk. We sat down across from each other, and I got right to the point. I know about you and John. I've seen everything. He froze, his face pale. For a few seconds, he just stared at me, trying to figure out how to react. I saw his hands start to shake slightly. Lisa, he started, but I interrupted him, just as I had interrupted John. No, Michael, I don't want to hear excuses. I want to understand why. Why did you do it? How could you? You knew it would ruin everything. He lowered his head. Silence filled the room. I watched him, waiting for an answer, but he was slow to speak. I don't know, he finally said. It happened, accidentally. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I didn't think it would turn out like this. I got confused. His words sounded as hollow as John's. They both seemed not to realize the extent of the destruction they had caused. They both talked about accident, about misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew it was their choice. It wasn't an accident. You destroyed our family, Michael. My voice shook. I won't be able to look at you like I used to. You're a part of this betrayal, and that will never go away. He looked at me with pain in his eyes, but he couldn't find the words to answer. I could see that he felt guilty, but his guilt couldn't fix what had happened. You need to leave, Michael, I said firmly. You can't stay here anymore. This isn't your home. He nodded. Tears filled his eyes for a moment, but he didn't let them spill. He realized that this conversation was the end of everything that had once bound us together as a family. A few days later, Michael packed his bags and left. I didn't say goodbye to him. I just watched him go, knowing that he was now a stranger to me.